Right, so we're on the River Calder today. We've fished on the canal today, but it's been pretty poor, so we've come down here and Bob's has set us a challenge now for an hour's fishing to try and catch 5 fish. So we've fed a bit of hemp and castor. We've just got a simple waggler rig, 2 gram waggler, 3 number 8s down the line. As you can see, not very deep. An 013 hook length with a 16B 560 and double maggot on the hook. So we've got an hour's fishing to try and catch 5 fish. As usual with the river, I've set myself up with a nice far bank marker and sort of plumbed around the area where I intend to catch them. And because it's not running that fast here, I'm feeding pretty much on top of the float as well. That's because it's so shallow as well. It's only about sort of 3.5, 4 foot deep. So there's no point feeding well upstream because the bait's going to get down pretty quickly, especially with feeding hemp and castor. So it's only a short run and it does shallow up as we go down the peg here. So that's why I've gone for a thick top straight waggler as opposed to an insert waggler. Again, we're not fishing on the drop because it's so shallow and there's a little bit of pace, so I want to make sure that I can just trip bottom nicely with a decent float on. And obviously with that, that's why I've got number 8s down the line as well, just so they register on that thicker bristle of the float. So that's just getting towards the bottom end of the run. Again, despite fishing under the weir, it's not that pacey down here. I thought there'd be a little bit more pace and a little bit more depth. And strangely, on this peg, the depth is all on this sort of inside line, if you like, the sort of 2 areas of flow down this bit of the river. I've plumbed up towards the far bank, where it's a bit quicker, and it's probably another foot and a half shallower there. So that's why we're fishing on the inside here, and you can just see it's just a nice gentle lob out with the float. I'm just trying to feed a small pouch of casters and hemp over the top. After plumbing up, the first thing I've done is put in a few pouches of hemp to establish a feed area, like an indication then. Yeah, to establish a nice feed area in the peg. And then as I've been running the float through the peg to see where it's going to run cleanest and best, that's where I've started introducing the casters. So I say hopefully with the hours fishing that we've got, and try and complete the challenge and catch 5 fish. It's not going to be easy. Quite often this peg's sort of full of roach and full of trout and grayling, but they don't seem to be here in massive numbers today. I've not seen any swirling or anything like that, so might prove to be a bit of a challenge. So I think it's just going to be a case of chucking the float around the feed area and trying to pick the odd fish up. Right, so there's our first fish now. It's probably about 5 minutes in and that's just come at the bottom end of the run. Nice sharp little bite. No, it's just fallen off. It's not ideal, looked like a little chub that. But at least we've had a bite quite early on in the challenge. So we've probably got still 55 minutes left. So same again, double red maggot. Again, that was pretty much right down the middle of where the feed's been going in. So hopefully on this chuck there'll be another one lined up for us. That float's just getting into exactly the same area where we just had that bite. So when it gets into that sort of area, that's when I'll check the line, make sure that I'm tight to the float. And it just also raises the hook bait up as well as it gets into that area where I'm expecting the bite. Might have been just dragging bottom there. Right, so there we go, we're into a fish now. Nice sharp bite at the back of the feed. Looks like it could be a grayling, this, the way it's fighting. Make sure we try and land this one. So there we go, that's our first fish. So we're off the mark about 10 minutes in. Hook's just dropped out in the net as well. It's a really lively fish, trying to hold him up. There we go, we're off the mark. Lovely Calder grayling. He saved me a bit of time by throwing the hook as well. Just making sure I've got all the weed off the line. Make sure the hook bait's clear, or the hook's clear I should say. I think we'll go for the same again. Double red maggot. And to make sure I've got plenty of hook point exposed, because we're fishing somewhere where there's grayling, where they can be a bit finicky. That's why I'm topping and tailing the maggots. Just trying to keep as much of the hook point exposed as possible. Same again, about 20 casters and a pinch of hemp. Right, so there we go, there's another fish on now. This is on the 15-minute mark and it looks like another grayling. Yeah, missed a couple of bites. I think the grayling are just, with it being a bit slower, just taking the bait that little bit more tentatively. Lovely quality fish though. This one looks a little bit bigger. And there we go, that second fish, still with 40 minutes to go. That's a much better sized grayling, that. Just hold him up for camera before we pop the hook out. There you go, lovely stamp. So we'll get the hook out of him and get him slipped back. Right, so we've let that one recover in the net and just slipped it back. It's like the first, it managed to throw the hook in the net as well, so they're only just very lightly hooking themselves. So that kind of lines up with what we've seen with the bites, where the bites are really quick and very finicky. Certainly noticeable in this run, there's just one particular sort of line that it seems to be running down where we're getting those kind of bites from what must be the grayling. It's just where there's a little bit more pace to the water. And that first fish that we hooked, which I think was a small chub, was just more in sort of like the slightly slower water, which is just a bit closer to us. Whereas all the fast bites that we've missed and those two grayling that we have hooked have been sort of probably another couple of yards further out. There's a sharp indication at the bottom of the run. So it's looking like we've got one or two fish lined up. So like I say, we've only got, was it about 40 minutes, 35 minutes or so left. So crack on and hopefully we can get the third very shortly. It's now in the peg, I've overfed it. There we go. Right, so we're into our third fish now. This feels like it could be a trout actually. Might be wrong, but we've got 20 minutes left now. I was getting a bit concerned. Let's see what we've got here. It's certainly another good quality fish. Yeah, it's a trout. This could be the same reason why we've not had the grayling in the peg, or the little chub. It's nice and lightly hooked right on the outside of the mouth. And that'll be the third fish of the day. So we've just slipped the hook out of him, and there we go, a nice little brown trout. So we'll get him popped back, and hopefully in the next 20 minutes we can catch another couple. Right, so after that trout we've got about 20 minutes left. So hopefully we can catch a couple more and get the 5 in the hour like we've been challenged to do. So that was another chunk of time where it took ages to get an indication, and then just out of the blue we've had that trout from the bottom end of the run. So it's certainly not the case that the peg's solid with fish. We're really having to work around the feed area to try and get them. And what I've also done as well is cut down on the feed. Considering we're running out of time to catch the fish, I want to try and sort of wean them onto the hook. I think if they are there, then there's enough bait in the peg already. So I just want to get a tiny little bit of bait going through the peg with my hook bait in and amongst it, and hopefully just increases the chance of the fish picking out the hook bait, especially with it being a change bait of double maggot. So this chuck I'll just go a bit further across. And I'm also starting the float in different areas of the peg as well when I'm running down, rather than just starting sort of right at the top end. Occasionally I'm chucking to the bottom end, just so it saves a bit of time running the float all the way through. So again, on this run I'm not going to put any feed in. Like I say, hopefully there's one or two just sat in the peg and they're just picking up the odd bit of feed that's going through. I don't think, you know, if they were going to be feeding really aggressively by now, we'd have certainly had a lot more indications. We won't be getting these sort of quiet spells. But with 15 minutes left, it's not ideal because I don't know exactly where in the peg I'm expecting the bites now. So we had those 2 grayling, a couple of missed indications, and then they just seem to have disappeared. And then, to say out of nowhere, we've had that third fish being a trout. So it could be that 1 or 2 chub are possibly at the bottom end of the peg. It's hard to say. There we go, just had a bite there and missed it, right at the bottom end. So after missing the bite there, I'm going to chuck down the peg probably 10 or 15 feet upstream of where I've just had that bite. If it turns out that because I'm catching the odd fish from small pockets of them, I would expect them to drop down the peg as well. So, like I say, it just makes sense and saves a bit of time. Right, so there we go, we've just hooked a fish now right at the bottom end of the run. And this will be our 4th with, looking at it, 13 minutes to go. Looks like another grayling, so I've just got to make sure we land this. And not a particularly big one. But I think it's easier just unhooking him in the water. Right, so there we go, 4th fish, nice little grayling. So we'll just let him recover in the landing net, and then we'll try and get the 5th with just under 10 minutes to go now. Right, so unfortunately they've just missed a couple of bites right at the end. I've caught 4 fish, 3 grayling and 1 trout and failed. So with an hour's fishing, I think I've been put onto a duff peg, and with the gear that's been lent to me by Bob's, it's not picked up the line quick enough, and that's why we've missed so many bites. So yeah, a bit disappointing, but we'll pass the challenge on to the next one. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.